The farmer's market buzzed with peaceful morning energy. But for a woman whose resilience was etched into her careful steps, that peace was about to be shattered by a man with a badge and a dangerously fragile ego. The Saturday morning sun drenched the town square of Willow Creek, painting the scene in hues of warm gold. The weekly farmer's market was the town's vibrant heart, a cheerful chaos of colorful tents, the scent of fresh kettle corn, and the overlapping melodies of local chatter and a distant folk singer. Families navigated strollers through the aisles, and elderly couples sampled honey with thoughtful smiles. It was a portrait of idyllic American life. Among the crowd moved Steven Seagal, a woman whose quiet elegance seemed to command a space of her own. She wore a simple white linen dress, her dark hair tied back in a loose, graceful knot. As she moved from a stall selling heirloom tomatoes to another displaying artisanal cheeses, her gait was deliberate, marked by a slight, almost imperceptible limp. The source of it was a sleek, matte black carbon fiber brace that encased her right leg from just below the knee to her ankle. It was a piece of advanced medical engineering, a constant companion since the car accident years ago that had tried, and failed, to break her spirit. She was known by the vendors not as a legend sister, but as the quiet woman who always asked about their kids and bought the slightly bruised apples to bake into pies. Leaning against his gleaming patrol car at the edge of the square was Officer Dean Maddox, 6 months into his transfer from a bustling city precinct and still convinced he was a big fish in a very small pond. His jaw was tight, his buzzcut severe. He took a long sip of his coffee, his eyes scanning the crowd not with a guardian's care, but with a predator's judgment. He watched an old farmer struggle to load a crate of corn onto his truck and scoffed under his breath. He saw teenagers laughing and mentally filed them away as potential troublemakers. Then his eyes landed on Steven. He saw her exit the market and head toward a polished, late-model Lincoln Navigator, a vehicle that screamed out of place in a town of dusty pickups and sensible sedans. He didn't see the gentle way she paid the baker or the resilience in her walk. He saw a woman who didn't fit, whose confident posture he misinterpreted as arrogance. His mind, wired for suspicion and starved for a real challenge, created a narrative. Too confident. Too expensive. Something's not right. He crushed his paper coffee cup in his fist, the small act of violence a prelude to what was coming. He tossed it into a nearby bin, adjusted the heavy belt on his hips, and began his approach. The peace of Willow Creek was about to be broken. Hold it right there. Maddox's voice cut through the market's gentle hum like a serrated knife. It was intentionally loud, designed to startle and assert dominance before a conversation even began. Steven paused, her hand on the navigator's door handle, and turned. A flicker of surprise crossed her face, but she remained composed. "I'm sorry, officer. Are you speaking to me? You see anyone else walking to this car?" He shot back, closing the distance between them. His posture was aggressive, his shoulders squared. "This your vehicle?" "Yes, it is," Steven replied, her voice steady. The familiar tightness of anxiety began to coil in her stomach, an old reflex to unexpected confrontation. She'd learned to mask it well. "License and registration," he demanded, not asked. He crossed his arms, a classic power stance. "Of course," she said, reaching for her purse. "Is there a problem?" "I'll ask the questions here," Maddox snapped, his voice rising in volume. A few nearby shoppers paused, their heads turning. "We get a lot of vehicle thefts in this area. You seem a little out of place." He let his gaze drift down, lingering for a bead on her leg, on the intricate straps of the carbon fiber brace. His lip curled in a barely concealed sneer. "Surprised you can even handle a machine this big." The insult, so personal and cruel, struck her harder than a physical blow. Her composure finally cracked. "My ability to drive is none of your concern," she said, her voice now laced with ice. "I have done nothing wrong." Her defiance was the spark his ego needed. "You got a smart mouth, huh? That's resisting." He lunged forward as she reached into the open car door toward the glove box. He grabbed her left arm, his fingers digging into her flesh. I said, "Hands where I can see them. Let go of me." Elara cried out, instinctively pulling back. Her balance, always a delicate negotiation, was gone. She stumbled, her braced leg buckling slightly. "You're hurting me." "My leg, it was badly injured." "You can't do this." Her plea for understanding was gasoline on his fire. "Everyone's got a story," he snarled, yanking her back with brutal force. He slammed the heavy car door shut, and with his other hand, he shoved her hard against the side of the vehicle. The impact was sickening. Her shoulder hit the metal panel with a heavy thud. But the worst sound was a sharp, cracking noise as her braced leg slammed against the door. A critical stabilization clasp on her custom support snapped under the force. A bolt of white-hot, familiar pain shot up her leg, and a scream tore from her throat, a sound of pure agony and terror. Across the square, Steven Seagal was admiring a bouquet of sunflowers, planning to surprise Elara with them. He was in his element, anonymous and relaxed, chatting quietly with the flower vendor. But the moment his sister's scream, a sound he hadn't heard since the night of her accident, pierced the air, his world snapped into sharp, cold focus. His head whipped around. The smile vanished from his face, replaced by a mask of glacial fury. He saw it all in an instant, the police officer, the glint of his badge, and his sister crumpled against the side of her SUV. He dropped the flowers. He didn't run. He moved. Each stride was a controlled explosion of purpose, eating up the ground between them. The cheerful market chatter died away as he passed, a wave of silence spreading in his wake. People instinctively stepped back, their eyes wide, sensing the seismic shift in the atmosphere. Maddox, high on adrenaline, barely registered the changing mood. He was fumbling for his handcuffs, trying to pull Elara's arms behind her back. "I told you to stop resisting," he grunted, twisting her wrist. "I'm not resisting, you broke my brace." She sobbed, tears of pain and humiliation streaming down her face. "Get your hands off her. Now." The voice was low, devoid of heat, yet it carried an absolute authority that made the air crackle. Maddox froze and turned, a defiant retort on his lips. It died there. Standing less than 10 feet away was a man who seemed to take up all the space in the world. Steven Seagal's eyes were like chips of ice, his jaw clenched so tight the muscles bulged. "And who the hell are you?" Maddox blustered, his bravado a flimsy shield. "This is official police business. Step back." Steven didn't waste another word. He moved with a speed that seemed impossible for a man his size. In the space of a heartbeat, he was at Maddox's side. The officer, startled, reached instinctively for his baton. It was a fatal mistake. Steven's hand shot out, not in a punch, but in a precise, fluid motion. He enveloped Maddox's wrist, his fingers finding the exact pressure points. With a sharp, controlled twist, he executed a perfect wrist lock, wrenching the officer's arm up behind his back. Maddox let out a high-pitched yelp of pain as his own momentum was used against him. His fingers went numb, and the handcuffs clattered to the asphalt. His body was forced forward, his balance utterly compromised. Elara, suddenly free, stumbled away and was caught by the horrified flower vendor. "I said," Steven growled, his voice a low thunder as he applied more pressure, forcing the disgraced cop to one knee, "Let her go. You're interfering with an officer." Maddox gasped, his face turning a blotchy red. "When the law acts like a thug," Steven snarled, shoving him forward, "a citizen's duty is to interfere." He released his grip, and Maddox pitched forward, landing face-first on the hot pavement with a pathetic grunt. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd, quickly followed by a smattering of applause. Seconds later, another cruiser screeched to a halt. Deputy Hudson, an older officer with tired but intelligent eyes, jumped out, his hand hovering over his weapon. "What in God's name is going on here?" he yelled. His question was answered by a dozen frantic voices at once. He assaulted her. Just threw her against the car. She told him her leg was hurt. He didn't care. That kid over there got the whole thing on video. Hudson's eyes darted from the man on the ground, red-faced and without cuffs, to the towering, furious man standing over him, and finally to Alara, who was leaning heavily on the vendor, her face pale with shock. He recognized the legend instantly, and his professional calm took over. "Mr. Seagal," he said, his voice respectful but firm. "Sir, can you please step back?" Steven turned his icy gaze on Hudson, but he saw no malice in the man's eyes, only a desperate attempt to control chaos. He gave a single, sharp nod and moved to his sister's side. "Get her a medic," he commanded. "And get this piece of trash off my street." Hudson was already on his radio. "Dispatch, I have an 11 to 99, officer-involved assault. Repeat, the officer is the suspect. Civilian female injured. Requesting paramedics and a supervisor to my location immediately. Notify internal affairs." The ambulance arrived with impressive speed. The paramedics, a man and a woman, approached Alara with practiced gentleness. They carefully cut away the fabric of her dress around the knee to inspect the damage. The skin around the now broken brace was already swelling, a deep, ugly purple blooming across it. Alara winced and bit her lip as one of them gently palpated the area. Steven stood inches away, a silent, menacing statue. His arms were crossed, but his hands were clenched into white-knuckled fists. Meanwhile, the video from a teenager's phone had hit the internet. Uploaded with the title, "Cop in Willow Creek Attacks Disabled Woman," it was already being shared at an exponential rate. The hashtag Justice for Alara was born. Maddox, now sitting cuffed on the curb, was still spewing venom. "You're all making a huge mistake. She was non-compliant. She could have been armed." An elderly woman who had been watching from her stall selling jam stepped forward, her face a mask of indignation. "Armed with what, you fool? A bag of organic sourdough? We all saw you. She's just a girl, and you treated her like a monster." Just then, a sleek black sedan pulled up. A man in a sharp suit, Agent Rios from Internal Affairs, stepped out. He walked directly to Steven. "Mr. Seagal," he said, his expression grim. "Agent Rios. We saw the footage on our way here. It was flagged by our digital team before we even got the official call. This is already a Category 1 priority." Steven's eyes never left his sister's bruised leg. "Good," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Then start acting like it." 3 days later, the administrative building of the county police department felt like a fortress under siege. News vans lined the street, and a small but determined group of protesters held signs that read, "A brace is not a weapon," and "Willow Creek deserves better." Inside a sterile hearing room, Dean Maddox sat at a long table, flanked by 2 stone-faced union representatives. He was a changed man. The arrogant swagger was gone, replaced by a pallid, sweaty sheen of fear. His head was freshly shaved, making him look less like a cocky cop and more like a convict. Steven Seagal entered the room alone. A hush fell. He didn't look at the panel of senior officers or the lawyers. He walked to the chair directly across from Maddox, sat down, and simply stared, studying him with the detached curiosity of a biologist examining a lesser creature. Finally, Maddox cleared his throat, his voice cracking. I just want to say, I didn't know who she was." Steven's expression didn't change. "That's your excuse?" "No. I mean, I didn't realize." He stammered, his eyes darting around the room, unable to meet Steven's unblinking gaze. "I didn't know she was actually disabled. I thought maybe it was for show, you know. For sympathy." Steven leaned forward slowly, the quiet movement carrying more menace than a shout. "So you admit you saw her vulnerability? You saw what you perceived as a weakness, and you chose to attack it. To test it. To see if you could break it." He paused, letting the words hang in the silent room. Your mistake wasn't in not knowing who her brother was, officer. Your mistake was in seeing a person you thought was weak and deciding that gave you the right to be cruel. It has nothing to do with her identity. It has everything to do with your character. The hearing proceeded. The teenager's video was played on a large screen, the sounds of the impact and Alara's scream echoing in the horrified silence. Deputy Hudson gave his testimony. Even Alara appeared via a secure video link, her face composed but her eyes betraying the trauma. I don't want revenge, she said, her voice quiet but firm. I just want to know that I, and every other person who navigates the world with a challenge, can walk to their car in a sunny town square without fear. We deserve to feel safe. Our protectors should not be our predators. Her words landed with more force than any legal argument. Maddox seemed to shrink in his chair, the last of his defiance draining away. When the three-officer panel returned, their decision was swift and unanimous. The lead officer, a stern-faced captain with decades of service, read the verdict in a flat, unequivocal tone. Officer Dean Maddox, you are hereby terminated from this department, effective immediately. Your badge is to be surrendered, and you are permanently barred from serving in any law enforcement capacity in this state. Furthermore, this panel will recommend the district attorney pursue criminal charges for aggravated assault, battery, and abuse of power under color of authority. Maddox's head dropped to the table with a soft thud. It was over. As Steven walked out of the building, he didn't look back. The press surged forward, but he ignored them, his eyes fixed on the horizon. He found Alara in the backyard garden of their shared home. The world of news trucks and legal battles felt a million miles away. Here, there was only the buzzing of bees and the scent of damp earth. She was kneeling on a foam pad, carefully tending to a bed of deep red roses. She had on a simpler, older leg brace, but she moved with a familiar grace. The sunlight caught in her hair as she looked up and smiled, a genuine, relieved smile. How did it go? She asked softly. It's finished, he said, kneeling beside her on the grass. He'll never wear a badge again. He'll never hurt anyone else. Alara reached out and touched his cheek. I never wanted revenge, Steven. Just peace. You got both, he replied, his voice softer than anyone in that hearing room would believe possible. Justice is the only path to real peace. She nodded, and a single tear traced a path down her cheek, a tear not of pain, but of catharsis. He pulled her into a gentle hug, the fierce protector and the resilient survivor, finding solace in their shared victory. In the garden, the roses stood tall, their thorns a reminder that beautiful things possess a quiet strength of their own, and that for the first time in a long time, the threat of an unwarranted storm had passed. This story is a stark reminder that true strength isn't about the authority you hold, but how you treat the most vulnerable. What happened to Alara could happen to anyone who is perceived as different or weak. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and please, always lead with respect. Let's make the conversation meaningful. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that matter.